Okay, great. Hello. All right. So we'll not wait anymore. As and when people join, they'll join. Thank you. So, so today's topic is on evaluation. Um, Quite a few people have asked in the past on how to evaluate, how to take examinations, how to score, how to talk about progress with the children. So I thought this is an important topic that we need to discuss, and the timing couldn't have been better because the results are just being declared for everyone. It's not audible. Okay, is it audible now? Okay. All right. So today we'll be talking a bit about evaluation, and we'll talk about it from the point of view of history. We'll talk about it from the point of view of how the dynamics that changed the system of evaluation, the understanding of evaluation, and what is more important when you consider evaluation. Recently, we have been observing that just a couple of years back, there was a study that declared that India is among the countries with the highest depression rate. And coincidentally, we are also the country with the highest competition and comparison and academic pressure. So it's obviously not just a coincidence, there is a relation. So we'll try to draw out on where this relation lies and what we can do as teachers, parents, schools, as peers to kind of work on this situation. So when we speak about evaluation, what are we evaluating? You can put it up in the chat box. What do we assess when we are evaluating, when we are taking examinations? Okay, application, understanding of the child. Knowledge, thank you. What else do we evaluate? Application, understanding, knowledge. Ourselves, okay, on a particular topic or a concept, how they apply the knowledge or how they integrate the knowledge. So, yeah, that is also something that we evaluate or at least try to evaluate. So, this is what we generally get when we ask various people. So there is performance, ability, progress, success. So if you have various stages of evaluation, you can come to know the progress also. Then how much of information is retained, how much of memorization takes place. Then application. Sometimes we try to make it in such a way that we come to know whether they can contribute to society or not. Then skills and employability, and ultimately uh, it's a way to understand how difficult your future would be. So if you can score higher, then that means you are more, apparently you are more intelligent, and if that is the case, then the future will be easier for you. So this is how the evaluation strategy is supposed to be. But let us take a look at what it was like. So in the beginning, through evolution, everything that we see around is basically everything that has survived through natural selection. So it was all about adaptation, how easily you can adapt to the situation around you, and the people who could do that survived till now. The creatures who could do that survived till now. Gradually, we saw the rise of social delegation and specialization. So there were various roles in tribes, and various roles in groups of animals and creatures, where somebody took up the role of leadership, somebody took up the role of parenthood, somebody took up the role of sentry, so to warn others when there is some kind of a danger, and somebody took up the work of making tools, and so on and so forth. So all this happened in small groups or tribes, and then we had the Varna system, or and variations of Varna system around the world, where things were classified, or things were evaluated based on tendencies and abilities. If someone likes to read a lot, this person will be labeled as Brahmin. If someone likes to lead, someone likes to inspire people, do brave acts or acts of bravery, then that person is labeled as a Kshatriya. Then if there is someone who prefers to keep to themselves and manage things, organize things, uh, more related to dealing with money and so on and so forth, so then that person would be a Vaishya. Then if there is someone who just likes to do their own work, even if it is physical labor, even if it is whatever, so if they just like, if they are just told what to do and they like to do that, then that person is a Shudra. Then you had the outcasts. So outcasts were people who did not agree with the principles, rules, and regulations of a particular group, say a village or a kingdom or whatever. So they were sent out of the kingdom, out of the reigning territory, and they were labeled as outcasts. So this was the Varna system. Then we had the commerce driven system, where things were more according to the industrial revolution, according to enterprise, according to whatever you are doing and the gains that you get out of it. Because if you think about it, then a Brahmin who is more interested in knowledge may not necessarily be very interested in money. Maybe interested in the working of money, like Chanakya, but then not very interested in actually doing anything with money. And someone who is a Kshatriya would probably be a uh, would probably be affected by money, but not necessarily deal with money or understand the working of money. So as the importance of commerce gained, and it started becoming the thing that drives the society, at that time that obviously gained more importance, and the systems, the evaluation changed around it. So how capable are you to hold a business, how capable are you to run an industry, how capable are you to take up a role in an industry. And gradually, as this happened, there caught up a rise of more of this. So people would want more of this commercial gain. So it was more success and ambition driven. And lastly, what we see nowadays, even if you give someone a very lucrative package, there is a chance the person won't accept. The person would probably look for something that is more fulfilling, something that is more engaging, something that makes the person happy. So that is the quality of life. That is what we observe right now. And here suddenly the evaluation has turned. So the evaluation now no more is of the person who is undergoing the learning process, but the evaluation has become both ways. So even the person who is undergoing the learning process is evaluating where and what do I want to do. One interesting observation here is during the natural selection time, it was more according to innate tendencies. So you had predators who would roam around in a solitary manner, because if you have a crowd of predators, then you probably may not have enough prey for survival. Um, so there was a balance between this. You had predators who moved in packs like wolves. You had predators who moved in prides like lions, but then you also had eagles and tigers and leopards who were more solitary. Uh, then gradually we moved to a tribal way of living where you moved in packs, you moved in groups, but you had specialized roles. So this was a tribal movement, and then came the familial kind of structure where you had families, you had people of various generations living together, and the knowledge was transferred from one generation to the other, and so on and so forth. So probably this is also the source of the caste system that we see today. What was there previously was the Varna system, but then staying in the same house, staying with the same people. So probably the next generation picked up the abilities of the previous generation, and that is how it started transforming into a caste system. Um, then you have the commerce driven system. So during this time, during the time of the industrial revolution, late industrial revolution, families started becoming more nuclear. You had only the children and the parents living together, and the grandparents used to stay somewhere else. So this is probably because of a generation gap. Then the next one was disjointed families. So now, due to so much of chasing happening because of ambitions and because of a drive for success, uh, you have more people living in various combinations, so to speak. There are people who are living alone. There are people who are living only as couples. They do not want to have children. There are people who are living with families, but then managing to stay away also at the same time. So these kind of combinations are happening. So these are disjointed families. Gradually, what is happening is the importance of bonds, the importance of relationships is triumphing over the drive for success, the drive for ambition. So now you have individuals who are living for the society. So now they are not living as individuals, they are living as contributing members of society. You have people who are living in close relationships. They do not want to have children because there are already too many children in the world and they would rather adopt. Then you have closed communities. Closed communities are people having a similar mindset coming together and settling down in remote areas in communities that are self sustainable. So, this is happening parallelly. Now, how does this fit in here? So, if you notice this timeline, the focus, the importance is changing. So previously things were evaluated through natural selection, then things were evaluated through your duty. So if your score or mental score, so to speak, would be more on the basis of how well you do the duty that you have picked up. And then after that, gradually we became commerce driven. So here commerce driven and success driven came hand in hand, because people looked at success in commerce as success. So gradually the evaluation system started getting more streamlined, it started getting more standardized. So one scale judges all, kind of a thing. And now, as we are focusing more on the quality of life, again there is a need for a very different kind of evaluation, a very different system of evaluation. So now coming to current and modern evaluation systems. So what we see today began somewhere around 1700s. So the first school that came up was in around, I think, 1634 or something like that, and it taught only languages and humanities. Languages, because at that time the mission was to spread religion, the mission was to spread philosophy or prosperity according to their philosophical beliefs. So to be able to do that, the first thing that we need to do is have a common language. So the first schools that began in, I think, the United States were more based on languages and humanities. Again, humanities is a topic which is very much dependent on your understanding of humanity. And coming from a religious background, the humanities also would be influenced in that way. So during this time, towards the late 1700s, um, so during the 1634 time, again there was the evaluation used to happen through discussions. It was spontaneous evaluation. It was not marks based. But as the industrial age began, so during the late 1700s, people started coming to know that if we have to have an industry, if we have to have a system where um, people are working together on a mass level and producing certain goods, they also need to be as efficient in their movement and their roles and their skills. So the first system of assessment was obviously choosing who to let in. So if you see the old movies, you will see these scenes where you have somebody coming over in a truck and they are choosing. So you get in the truck. So then these people who get in the truck, they go, they work, and then they come back. The next day they'll come, they'll see again who is fit, who is right for the job. If someone is handicapped, they obviously won't choose that person, and the rest of them again they'll take in the truck, and so on. So this is how they were marked. So they were marked that this job has happened or this job has to happen. And gradually that turned to scores, because they came to know that with the rise in industries, now there is a competition for labor also. So you cannot have an uncertainty of labor, that you have to keep depending on the labor being available. The people who you hired maybe the previous day will may be taken away today by somebody else who maybe arrives earlier at the scene where all the workers are waiting for the jobs. So in this situation, the people who were intelligent, the industries who were enterprising, they decided to take matters in their own hands, and they started influencing the schools around them to introduce things that would benefit them. And this score, the marks that they introduced here, were on the basis of nudging people towards a certain direction so that their things are fulfilled, their requirements are fulfilled. So this is how the marks came around in the 1800s. So from being tick marks for fit and unfit, now it became tick marks or numbers for how fit is someone. Then you had the grading system that was introduced. because you have to remember that these people, the people who are introducing these evaluation systems, are people mostly from the Western regions, like Europe and Americas. So these people, they introduced these systems uh, first for work, and then gradually when they realize that there are lots of colonies and we can ship labor instead of making our people work, they gradually moved to a schooling system which was again something that could develop society. So they shipped off this marking system to places like India and Africa and China, and gradually they started introducing the grading system in their own schools. So this grading system was used to evaluate people's ability, their potential, and their progress. So again, we are back to the previous way of evaluation, where all this is more important. Now, here in this system, so they had various subjects like banking and stuff like that, things that, which were not introduced in the colonial areas. And these required a different kind of mindset, these required a different kind of learning. So this grading system was also a lot different. What we see as a grading system, as a range of marks as one grade, is not what this is. So this grading system was credit based. So according to what you want to do, you had certain subjects which had more importance. The university grading system that we see nowadays is basically the grading system that they introduced at that time. So if there is something more important for you to know, that would be given a higher weightage, and the rest of it you can fiddle around with. You can change your subjects and so on. In India, the marking system was introduced in 1830. That is when the East India Company came in. Because before that, we still had our Gurukul. Um, Gurukuls, along with the other education systems that the Muslim invaders, Arabian invaders, and Persian invaders brought in. Um, so at that time, still the evaluation was not on a marks basis, it was still on a performance basis directly. But the marking system was brought about by the British somewhere around late 1830s. Then you had the marking system of how fit and to train and to make fit around 1830s. That is when the industrial revolution was already in full flow in the European countries. So the colonizers, that is the British and Spanish and Portuguese, whoever was trying to colonize other territories, they basically set up factories in these places like India and China and Africa. Then you had the grade system, which was introduced in 2007. So from 1830s to 2007. So that is so many years later on. And even then, the grading system that was introduced was the kind of grade system to not make the children feel bad. You know, the range wala grade system, that 75 onwards is O, and from say 65 to 75 is A, and so on. So a grading system to not let the children feel bad, that kind of a system was introduced in 2007. But the actual effective grading system in schools was introduced in 2009 with the RTE, but was withdrawn in 2017. Can you guess why it was withdrawn in 2017? Have you heard of CCE? Okay. So, just to clarify for the people who have not heard of CCE, CCE is continuous comprehensive evaluation. So, this is a strategy that was introduced by the government through RTE, where now the children will no more be stressed for annual exams. Exams will be taken on a very regular basis, and evaluation will happen then and there. And the annual examination will not you won't need to have the whole portion in the annual exam. So the stress, the pressure on the children would have been greatly reduced. Unfortunately, most of the schools did not know how to implement this. And so in 2017, CCE was scrapped. So, and that is obvious if you consider that we had the same education system from 1830 to 2007, or in fact 2009. Student psychology stress of student. The stress would have been lesser if it would have been followed properly. Because um, during the continuous um, evaluations, you will be evaluating a certain part of the portion, and then the rest of it won't have to come up again. So yeah, so it was previously introduced because the old education system, what we still refer to as the modern education system, was running more on the basis to develop skill, as Vandana ma'am has stated. So the CCE was introduced to change that scenario, to reduce the psychology, the stress, and everything. But then the people couldn't, since we were already stuck in a rut since so many years, from 1830 to 2009, that is to 179 years. So 179, almost close to 200 years, we were stuck with the same education system. So obviously, it is going to be very difficult to change. But do you all think it was a very good idea to get rid of something this progressive, something that could have helped us change our education system? Another interesting aspect of CCE was that as the child progressed in various standards, they had to keep a record, and the record was formally handed over to the next teacher so that the next teacher has the previous records of the child. Yeah, so it is a pity that it was scrapped. It could have been done in a more systemized manner, in a more helpful manner. So now we are back to the education system that we were stuck with 200 years ago. I have not mentioned a couple of education systems here. So, for example, the DMIT thing that has come up, because these are education systems that have been introduced by private organizations. So, these private organizations have introduced something that is of more profit to them. So, things like DMIT, that is Derma, what is it called? Does anyone know the full form of DMIT? So it's basically multiple intelligence tests. So MIT is multiple intelligence test, and D stands for something related to the skin. So derma is skin. So the fingerprint tells you how intelligent you are and in what direction. I think this is not something that we should even mention here, because even if there is some kind of a relation, you have to understand that the same test taken multiple times will give you different results, at least the multiple intelligence part. Because there are times in certain mindsets with certain experiences, you perform in a different way, and there are times when you end up scoring according to the predictions, but even then it is not very accurate. So quite a few companies took it up as a marketing gimmick, and they sold this software to a lot of schools, and it is not really accurate. And even if it is really harmful to the children, because we would basically be caging them in things that they may not even have thought of. So it is good to introduce variety. It is good to introduce a little bit of spectrum for the children to explore. But then depending on something like this can be really harmful. So this is the new kind of evaluation system that we are facing, that is commercially driven evaluation. Along with this, we also have a lot of e-learning kits. We also have a lot of e-education softwares where the evaluation is happening according to a very cleverly designed software. So if you answer a certain question in a certain way, so that means your emotional ability, emotional intelligence is this much. And if you answer it in another way, that means your analytical ability is this much. Then your behavior, your mathematical ability. So basically, it's just a more complicated marking system, but it is ultimately a marking system. So these are the current and modern evaluation systems. So among the private ones that I have not mentioned here, one is DMIT and the other is the evaluation systems, the complex evaluation systems that are introduced through e-learning. Now, yeah. So what are the characteristics of these evaluation systems? So if you consider the current evaluation system, it is obviously more authoritarian. So it is mandated. You don't hear this in many schools that the examinations are optional. There are alternative schools that do that, but then in conventional schools, there are no schools where the examination is optional. So it is authoritarian. You have to face it. Then you have these evaluation systems are unidirectional. So the scoring is happening only for the child. The teaching is not counted, the class environment is not counted, the school is not counted, the intentions, the behavior, the experiences, the environment of the child, all these things are not counted. Only the child's ability to pass the examination is counted. So it is unidirectional, only one thing. Then it is condescending. So condescending means it puts the child down. So it basically puts the child in that scenario or that mood that you are meant to be evaluated. You are the person who doesn't know anything, and that is why we are going to check how much you have learned. So again, because of the unidirectional thing, it puts the child down. It puts the child in that kind of a chair where they may be observing something different. They may observe that maybe the teacher does not know more than me, and that should be okay. But because of the kind of education system we are carrying with us, the failing education system that we are carrying with us, now it has become a burden on both the child and the teacher, because both of them have to keep up their drama. Both the teacher as well as the child have to keep up their roles. The teacher has to keep up the role that I know everything and you don't, and the child has to keep up the role that I may know quite a bit but I have to stay quiet. So this is the condescending education system, that the evaluation system that we have currently. Then the next thing is that it is external. The child does not feel anything for this education system. The child does not feel anything for the exams, because all the child sees is a piece of paper, the pencil in hand and something on the paper, and then it goes. God knows what happens to it, and then after that you get a score. So the child has absolutely no understanding on what is being counted, on what is being evaluated. So gradually the children become psychologists. The children become very clever and they start understanding, okay, you know what, this teacher tends to give these kind of questions, and if you write these kind of answers you will not get marks, but if you write these points then you will get marks. So now the children are no more studying or learning the subject or learning whatever is being taught, they are learning how it is being taught and how it will be evaluated. So the middle part is gone. You are supposed to be evaluating how learning is happening, but that is the thing that you are basically ignoring. So now the child is just learning how to get more marks out of which teacher. So that is how external the evaluation system is. Then the scale. So here the scale is very comparative. So every time people are looking at who is getting more marks and who is scoring higher, who is the teacher looking at, who is the teacher looking after, who is the teacher partial to, then if I don't have much marks, then what am I good at? Should I just stay in the back benches, maybe get over with 10th and then let's see what happens. So it becomes a very pitiably comparative scenario where you are pitting people against each other and we are waiting to see who wins. So it's a very barbaric system. And it's a blessing that a few states like Tamil Nadu and all, they have decided to scrap away merit lists. So since so many years, they have refused to pick up merit list. And still somehow the rest of the country is still following that system where we have people coming in as soon as the results were declared. You have newspaper articles coming in which talk about somebody scoring the highest marks in the country. There are people scoring 100% marks in the country. If an evaluation system gives you the ability to score 100%, it means the evaluation system has already been outdated. So this goes to show how and on how many levels the current evaluation system has already been outdated. Then the goals. So the goals of the evaluation system are limited and imaginary. So you are basically marking them so that they work harder. You are basically marking them to see what score they come out with. You are basically marking them on this abstract concept of success, which probably you yourself have never seen. So how is it that we decide that the current evaluation system is going to help them succeed, is going to help them get a job? Yes, maybe it will help them get a job, but will it help them do it? So all the goals are limited and very imaginary. Then you have the ultimate thing, that is the marks. So as I said, this evaluation system, the result is the marks. So if you have a set of marks coming in, a set of numbers coming in, you also need to be trained on interpreting those numbers, which is why we have an entire social system to help children believe that bigger is better. You know what is success? You need to have a bigger house. You know what is success? You need to have a better car. You know what means that you are at the top of the world? Being at the top of the world. So basically you are crushing everyone else so that you are there. That is success and that is what you are living for. So that is what the marks is getting in. But contrary to this, if we look at an effective evaluation system, what would it look like? So an effective evaluation system, the whole concept of evaluation, so being able to value what you have or being able to see the values that you have, the only way we can do that if the driving force is self progress. So if we have an evaluation system where we are looking at self progress, then it will be something which could probably make a difference. Then we have feedback. So instead of having an evaluation system which is unidirectional, why not have have an evaluation system where you evaluate both the directions? You evaluate what the child was given, the resources that the child had, and what the child could make out of it. So if you have a bad teacher, but in that scenario the child has done really well, and when I mean bad teacher, I mean like a bad character teacher. A teacher who does not know their stuff does not necessarily have to be a bad teacher, because learning can happen at any level, learning can happen at any age. So a teacher who researches, who admits that I was probably wrong, and comes back to the class the next day and teaches whatever the child has researched after being wrong, that is not a bad teacher. A bad teacher is someone who um, refuses to change even after realizing that something has gone wrong, and out of frustration of that wrongness probably does something that everybody everybody regrets. So if you have an evaluation system with feedback here, then this is mutual progress. The teacher also progresses, the child also progresses, and obviously the school progresses. Then you can have an evaluation system where you have awareness. So instead of condescending, instead of putting the child down, why not be more aware of everyone's conditionings, your conditionings, the child's conditionings. So when I mean conditioning, I mean if whatever we have, I think spoken about conditioning a couple of times before. So things because of the society, because of the environment, because of the family, which we assume to be true, that is conditioning. So if instead of that we act with awareness and we explore everything that is around us, probably it would be a better evaluation system. An effective evaluation system would be visceral, would connect with the child, with everybody concerned at a much deeper level. It won't be something like, yeah, I scored 70 and fine, I don't feel anything about it. I may feel happy for like a day if I score 100, but then after that, it's still the normal thing. But a visceral evaluation system will give you a deep insight on where you are. What have you learned so far? What do you want to learn? Which direction are you headed in? If you keep doing XYZ things, then you will probably keep heading in that same direction. So, do you want to stay on that course, or do you want to change that course? So, it will be more visceral, it will be more engaging. Then you have the scale. So, the scale is more holistic, it is more natural in effective evaluation systems, which means it takes care of multiple faculties, not just multiple intelligence, so to speak. And it is more natural. That means you are not put in that artificial scenario that you have to sit, write an exam, and you will be rated by someone else. So it is more natural. It's something like if today you are able to solve a certain problem, but you are not able to solve a more difficult problem. If you work hard enough, if you think from many different perspectives, tomorrow you will be able to figure out a solution, because it is related to the new things that you have learned. And here the whole thing is very natural, because you are not looking at just the ability to solve a problem. You are also looking at how learning and application is happening by itself. So when I mean problem, I don't mean like word problems or things like that. I mean even things like say agriculture. So if you have a garden in your school, and the child has decided that they want to plant say dhania, and they plant the dhania seeds, and you have dhania plants popping up, but then you also have a lot of unnecessary stuff. So you have a lot of weeds. So they see that this is a problem. They'll probably examine where the weeds are growing, why the weeds are growing, and how deep the weeds are, and so on. And they'll work their way towards solving that problem. So this is how the natural way of solving problems is coming, and this can be evaluated qualitatively. And since this is natural, since this is holistic, and since it is evaluated qualitatively, it is limitless and it is very real. So unlike the current evaluation system where the target is 100%, here there is no target. You can keep progressing and there is no limit for your progress. So these are the characteristics of current evaluations and evaluation strategies, and what an effective evaluation strategy could look like. So the best way to look at evaluation systems would probably be to go home, or begin at home. So here home would mean whoever one meets or engages. So where is this intelligence? If you engage the child or if the child engages you. If you figure out innovative ways to engage the child, is the child really intelligent? Is the child really choosing what to do? And comparatively, if the child engages you, the child keeps asking you questions, the child develops or designs their own toys, games, or obstacle courses, and so on, is that more towards intelligence? Then these kind of engagements, excuse me, so these kind of types of engagements, are they physical, emotional, or are they articulated? So normally you will observe for very young children, these are mostly physical. They like to run, they like to climb, they like to hold things, they like to pick them up, they like to break them also sometimes because they want to test their strength. And gradually they become more emotional. So they'll probably develop things out of emotions. They'll probably do some things which make them happy more, and gradually they are learning control over them because they are learning through play. They are learning through consequences. So if suppose like if you notice dogs, so the dogs when they have to play, they have a certain signal, and this is the case with I think cats also, and mice also. So in all these creatures, there is a particular signal for play. And if you notice small children, the signal is the same even in small children. So what they'll do is they'll make a sudden movement and they'll bend down. So in dogs, you will notice that their front legs go flat and their head is bowed down while looking at the other dog, and their tail and the hind legs are still up. And this is a sudden movement. Cats also you will notice something similar, and you will notice something similar even in children. So quite a few times you will notice that the children have not said anything to each other, but suddenly they are playing pakda pakdi. They are catching each other, they are running behind each other, but there has been no verbal exchange. But at the same time, what you will notice in all creatures, dogs, cats, human beings, everyone, while playing, there will come a stage where somebody is pushing too hard, or somebody is hitting someone, or somebody is doing something which makes the other person cry, or which makes the other person shout, and then suddenly the game stops. Suddenly everybody is asking what happened, are you okay, is everything fine? So this is how the children are learning behavior. So here the evaluation would mean if the child does not stop even after the other person is crying, that means there is some issue, that means something has not developed properly. So these things are supposed to develop naturally, and if they do not develop naturally, then probably there would be a need of intervention, and we'll find out what kind of interventions can be done. So this emotional engagement happens after that. Then you have the articulation. You have children who keep asking what. You will have children who keep asking why. Now this is a very confusing period. The children will keep asking what because they want to know the names. They are developing their content, so to speak, their vocabulary. And gradually the questions will shift to why. But when they ask why, they don't ask why as in what is the purpose, or what is the purpose. When they ask why, it is a mix between how and why. So they want to know how it happens. So they want to know the cause behind it, the process behind it. So this is another way of engagement. So this is these are stages of engagement, you can say. So if these kind of things are evaluated, if these kind of things are observed, isn't it enough to understand that the child is developing? As I mentioned, if something like this is not happening, you obviously know something is wrong. If a very small child, you give them a finger and if the child is not catching the finger, like a baby, so if the baby is not catching the finger, you know something probably could be wrong, because and you start checking whether the child can see, whether the child can hear, whether the child can feel. You go to doctors, you try to find out, because catching or grabbing is a very typical tendency of babies, and it is meant to happen. That is how that action develops, that is how those muscles develop. Then you have other things like running around and climbing. So if a child never walks, never runs, then you ask the doctor why the child is not walking, why the child is not running, because you can evaluate, you can understand that it is not happening at the proper age, it is not happening at the proper time. If a child is not able to talk, you know something is wrong, you know something that has not developed well. And when I mean not does not speak, it means it's a complex issue. Not just speaking, it's about expressing also. Then if you have children who are completely disinterested in everything, now this is where the confusion starts. Somehow during this stage where you notice that the child is losing interest in something, you still don't feel anything is wrong, because somehow we have already accepted it that yes, today's education system is has failed, and this is a result of it. But then this is a bitter medicine that the child needs to take so that they can be successful. But as more and more people are realizing that this is not the case, this is not really fruitful, and in fact it is quite destructive to society and to everyone concerned, things are changing. People are stepping back and people are working on various ways of creating evaluation systems. So if the previous system of evaluation was already a failure, uh, if it was not a failure, do you think so many companies would have stepped forward to develop e-learning kits, to develop alternative evaluation methods, to develop something like DMIT? They wouldn't have seen a market in it. Everybody knows that it is failing. It's not like it's a secret or anything like that. So it is high time that we figure out a way to evaluate that is actually effective. We figure out a way to evaluate that is real, that is not fictional, that is not just number based, and number based again being an external way of evaluation. So there is something that I am currently working on, and if any of you are interested in contributing to that or trying it out, maybe we can have a discussion on it on Google Groups or WhatsApp or something. So this is our small attempt to change. So instead of a marking system, fine, till the time the government doesn't change their strategies, if you want to keep a marking system, you can keep it. But maybe you can have a kind of working, a kind of system. Please take that. I'm sorry, I don't understand, ma'am. Okay, so I'm sharing basically what we are trying to develop. So this is an evaluation system based on observation. Okay, a separate session for that. Maybe I once I gain more clarity, or if we all work together and design this system, so maybe we can do it together then. So this system is based on a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is not for the children, it is for the parents, it is for the teachers, it is for everyone who observes the child. And then maybe we can have another questionnaire on self reflection for the children. So these will all be qualitative ways, these will all be qualitative evaluations. So I have 20 questions here for an example. So things like, so the first one is noticing fine things, noticing very subtle things. So if in India you see a lot of trucks, right? And most children have seen trucks. And most children have grown up in an environment where they are always told something is good, something is bad, something is good, something is bad. But when you see a truck and if you see goods carrier written on it, then shouldn't it draw some kind of curiosity for you? As in, why is this a goods carrier? What is it carrying which is so good? So if a child is able to notice tiny things like that, subtle things like that, that means the child is observant. And this also helps you understand one thing, that you'll notice this, that this ability is diminishing gradually, it is reducing gradually. With more children, with newer generations, it is reducing. And this reduction is coincident with technology. So proper for children who don't spend too much of proper time with gadgets, um, tend to ask these questions. But children who spend too much time on gadgets, children who spend too much time on even fancy toys, more toys, more colorful schools, more colorful things around them, bright colors and cartoons and so on, television. So these kind of children will tend not to ask these questions. So this is one way to evaluate whether the child is really observant, whether the child is aware, whether the child is alert, and whether the child thinks. Because look at it from this way, if the child has asked you this question, the child has obviously tried to answer it by themselves for some time, at least attempted to answer it. And then if the child doesn't find that reasoning, if the child still does not find any logic, any rationale behind it, that why would a truck have goods carrier written over it, then they would ask. And then as a parents, you can try to explain them the concept of goods as material that is to be transported and so on. But that questioning is very important. So trying to analyze or trying to understand where these questions are popping up from is very necessary, and this is one kind of evaluation that can be done. Then level and quality of questions. Is the question articulated very well? Is the question about something that is that requires a certain sense of thinking? So something that probably seems very obvious, but then you know that if the child is asking this question, then there is a lot of thought that has gone behind it. So these questions. So to give you an example, um, maybe things like, why is the sky so blue? And why does the sky keep changing colors is even more complicated. So these kind of questions, when they come up, you can understand how much the child is thinking and up to what level. Then spatial awareness. The child realizing the different how space works basically. So how much distance to keep between what. So if you are suppose gardening, so then being able to look at all the plants that are already there in your garden, in the surrounding, and imagining that okay, so probably if I put the seed, it will need so much of space around it to grow. So this is one kind of spatial awareness. Sitting down in places where you have proper space, where you won't come in the middle of anyone. Like if you are standing at a door, that is a loss of spatial awareness. If you are standing on stairs, which is very risky, and it could probably obstruct someone else, block someone else, so that is a lack of spatial awareness. I am very sure this you must have noticed in society also. Someone who holds the door when somebody else is walking in. So the spatial awareness is there that somebody is walking behind me. I know that there is someone behind me, so I'll open the door and keep it open so that the other person walks in, and then I'll close it. So this is again spatial awareness. Yeah, in the current scenario, this is very important because social distancing is an important factor. So having that awareness of where you are standing and what kind of people are, not what kind, but at what distance are people standing uh, around you, and being able to adjust according to that. That is spatial awareness. So everything to do with space, everything to do with an awareness of the space around you. This is also a way of understanding intelligence, of evaluating. Then inclusion. So being able to treat everyone, yeah, standing in queue. So standing in queue is also a very good example. Uh, we can see this in local trains in Mumbai. We can see this in queues everywhere across the country. People stick to each other. There is nobody standing behind you, but still you stand and stick to the person in front of you. Why? Nobody knows. So, this is also a part of spatial awareness. Then coming to inclusion. So, if you have people around you who are doing different things, looking different, and behaving in a different way, being able to include them whenever it is needed, as in whenever the situation needs it. So for example, if you are suppose celebrating a birthday, and if you are celebrating it at home, if you celebrate it with all your friends, good enough. If you celebrate it with all the people in the room, along with the maybe the servants who have helped you set it up, maybe the children of the servants who have come there, just by chance. So celebrating it with everyone, that is inclusion. Then if you have people in your class who are maybe a bit different, there is maybe a certain boy who is just not able to talk. You maybe have a certain girl who is very rude and very irritable. So being able to include all of them and working together with all of them, so that is one way of evaluation. So here you know that the child has understood dignity of labor. You know the child has understood diversity, and you know the child has understood respect for that diversity, um, uh, and in a very natural way. So you don't have to pass an exam for that. You don't have to write on a page that the people who take care of the society are sweepers who sweep the streets, are barbers who cut hair, are police people. So you don't have all those things. You have it in a very natural way, and you understand it to the depth. Then evaluation of courage. being able to take up challenges, being able to do brave things, and working on it with a lot of diligence, taking up tasks and actually finishing them. So, all this gives you an evaluation of courage. Then, sensitivity. So, how you treat other things, other people, how understanding you are. If someone is carrying too many things, offering your help. If someone, again, the door example. So, if someone holds the door open behind you for the other person to answer that enter, that is sensitivity. Then independence. So, being able to work on problems by yourself and seeking help only when you are absolutely at a what do you say, at a loss of solutions, and then start working on it the moment you hear even a part of the solution. So that is independence. Then along with that, you have other behaviors where you will see the child always involved in some activity, and the child will not ask you anything, or the child will not uh, keep telling you that I'm bored, I'm bored. So the child will figure something out to engage himself or herself. And if the child is facing boredom, that is a very good thing, because boredom is what leads to invention, is what leads to thought. So it is probably, you can say, the one of the ways in which independence develops in children. Then you have conflict resolution, being able to break fights amicably between people other than yourself. So, if you are not involved in a conflict, if you are not involved in a fight, being able to break that fight. And even if you are involved in a kind of a disagreement, being able to come to those terms where everything has been settled rationally without any loss towards anyone. Then this we already discussed, that is what's changing to whys and hows. Then you have involvement. How involved is the child in family activities, in day-to-day activities, in helping the teachers, in helping his friends? How involved is the child in everything that is going on around him or her? Then ownership. If the child has probably dropped something, or if somebody else has dropped something but the child is present, being able to take care of it, taking ownership of it. If you notice, involvement and ownership are things that people talk about even at corporate level. So these are skills that are learned at this stage. If they are not learned at this stage, even if you become professionals, then these things won't be imbibed. So it has to be ingrained at this age. So ownership and involvement can be evaluated like this. Then initiating social contact. Quite a few times you notice that quite a few children are reserved. They don't like to talk much. But if you notice, the same children, they talk perfectly well, and they in fact even initiate conversations with certain people. So this does not mean that the child has not developed social skills. It just means that the child is so clear on who to talk with, on what to speak, that the child actually has that whole scenario chalked out. That I will speak only with certain people, and these are the topics that I want to talk about. So that that clarity has been gained at that age. So that is actually something very much appreciated. Uh, so this is something that can be evaluated. Then again, coming to confidence. So courage and confidence are similar. The only difference is courage comes in various scenarios where initiatives are considered. Initiatives are involved. Confidence is related more towards how you behave and how you portray yourself. So confidence also can be evaluated if you understand the meaning of the word properly. Then you have maturity. So maturity is another thing that can be evaluated in various ways. So if you talk about what contributes towards maturity, maybe we can have a better clarity at it. So we can say patience, being able to listen to other people, being able to act pertaining to the pertaining to the specific scenario that you are in. So all these things relate to maturity. Then helpfulness, the nature to help others. Then sharing, understanding. So understanding in different ways, understanding people, understanding concepts, understanding logic, rational processes, all these things. They all can be evaluated in a much more natural way through questionnaires, through questioning. Then positivity and optimism. What comes to your mind? What kind of thoughts come to your mind when you look at a certain situation? Are they negative thoughts? Are they positive thoughts? Are they neutral? Then you have curiosity, one of the most important things that can be evaluated. Or in fact, if you can evaluate curiosity, it will give you a reflection of all these things. If a child is curious, the rest of the things will be learned by the child. It's as simple as that. Then you have physique and posture. So evaluating the physique of a child, evaluating the posture of the child. Is the child slouching too much? If the child is the child getting tired too easily? So why is that happening? So all these things need to be evaluated, and they need to be evaluated naturally. So currently I am trying to work out a questionnaire. I am trying to work out a way to evaluate these things. So these things can be shared with parents, these can be shared with schools, with teachers, and hopefully we can create a change in the way we evaluate things, or at least what kind of evaluation we give importance to. So now coming to the how do we do this? So just a few examples. So if you want to engage the child, suppose you want to understand how the child is thinking, or uh, even if you are yourself stuck in certain decisions that you need to take, why not ask their views on what is going on? If you are watching news, whatever the child understands, why not ask them? There is a chance that the child has actually understood what is going on in the news channel, but the child does not respond in any way, because that is not expected of the child. We normally are so condescending towards children that they feel that it is not their role, it is not their duty to understand these things. So if we bring them in the picture, we bring them actively into these news, these issues, uh, business problems, technology problems, decision making. So if we get them, get their suggestions, get their inputs, then we understand where they are, at what level they are thinking, and at what depth they are thinking, from what depth they are thinking. Then a rubric is so this is a kind of what do you say, like a bridge between the failing evaluation system, and that is the grading system, and the system that we are going towards. So rubrics, if you search, you will find a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different examples. To just take one of the examples, suppose you want to improve your handwriting. So a rubric for development of handwriting will basically uh, begin, or rather end, with a perfect scenario for your handwriting. So you will have case D, you have A, B, C, D. So in case D, you imagine a situation where you have a perfect handwriting. What would it look like? So the spacing would be uniform. The letters would there will be no cancellations, there will be no overwriting. The letters would be perfectly formed, and all the letters would be similar to each other. So one F is going here and the H is going upwards, or what, all the letters are touching the lines which they are supposed to touch. So this specific scenario, this descriptive scenario of a perfect handwriting will be your case D. Then you start taking steps backwards. So if you have to develop a perfect handwriting, you reduce one of those components. Maybe you reduce the component where all the loops are supposed to be perfect with each other. So now you are concentrating on uh, everything falling on the same line, and you are concentrating on equal spacing, and you are concentrating on the formation of letters. Then case C, sorry, this was case C. Case B would be one more thing lesser than that. So you are maybe focusing on everything touching the line, and you are focusing on equal spacing. So you are now a bit lenient on how the characters are being formed. Then you have case A, which is your current situation, uh, one up over the current situation. So if your current situation is where all these things are not happening, so case A would be one step in that direction. So maybe we'll begin with all the words coming on the line. Spacing and all we'll look in the next case. So this is how rubrics work. So when you evaluate yourself on these things, you have set the parameters of what your perfect scenario would be, and you have set the track record for it on how you want to approach it. So when you evaluate yourself, you are evaluating by where you are, how much you have done of what. So this is how a rubric works. Then interaction with a diverse group of people. If the children are led to interact with government officials and your family friends, so various people in trains and all, when you are there under your supervision, you encourage them to interact with them. So how they interact, how they talk, what they ask, whether they are listening, if they are listening, how do they respond. So all these things are one way to evaluate. So if you have, suppose if you want to develop an understanding of how much the child is say uh, involved with nature, or the sensitivity of the child, if you take the child to the forest officer, or maybe some IAS officers in rural settings, so the child will be able to interact with them based on the knowledge and the emotions the child is carrying. So this is one way. Then yeah, so this is just an example. Now coming to problem solving. So working on different solutions that are kind of complicated, you think are complicated, but if the child faces it, maybe it is very simple for the child, because we look at it from a very constrained point of view. So these are activities that we can involve the children in, and the best part is you can involve them in these activities without condescending them. Because if you involve them in your business decisions, how are you condescending them? It is something that you do. You are yourself looking for business solutions, and you are engaging the child in searching for business solutions with you. So obviously you are giving that respect to the child. So now you are no more condescending, you are considering the child as an equal. Then there are a few things where so as I said that where corrective measures are necessary, so this is how it must be done. I haven't put one word here, which is neutral. So incremental neutral percentage correction of errors. So spelling errors is one example here. So for spelling errors, for example, if you want to do the corrections, you don't correct the whole thing at once. a few things you correct in one layer, and once you know that the child has mastered the ability to use these words, these punctuations in the correct way, then you move on with the more complicated words or different words, so to speak. So corrections are done in incremental ways. Now if you have to do the same thing in behavior, if a child is just not able to keep their emotions in check in disagreements and is very violent, gets very aggressive. So in that case, again, if you have to do this in incremental percentages, so you first figure out what is going on with the child. You try to understand the things that are affecting the child. Is the child jealous? Is the child aggressive? Is the child irritable because maybe there is not much sleep? What is happening? And then you begin working on them in an incremental way. First you help the child understand. First you make the child notice. You just pull the child back and you show them, okay, see what is happening. Are you feeling good about it? Is the other person feeling good about it? Then you get the child to talk to the other person and try to let them figure it out for once. And then after that you maybe talk to the parents also to regularize the sleep schedule. So you work on it in incremental percentages. You do not directly tell the child what you have done is very bad and that will not be tolerated and we do not allow this here, and like just barrage the child with a collection of corrections. So you work in bits and small steps. So this is, as I said, something that we are experimenting with right now, and if anybody would like to get involved, just let me know through mail, through Google Groups, whatever, um, and we can maybe try to figure out this kind of a system together. So this is food for thought. And that brings us to the end. I'm sure uh, this will have a lot of um, introspection going on. Sorry, introspection that it will induce. So if you have any questions, we can discuss them right now, or we can end the session here and you can ask them later. So I just wanted to end this with this scene from village schools in Netherlands. Netherlands, if you must have read, today it is lauded as the country with the best education system. So what happened and how it has ended up here. So for example, if you see this picture came up in an article which said what is wrong with this picture. So if you look at this picture, everything seems to be going haywire. But if you look closely, if you look very closely, each and every child of this picture, in this picture, is engaged in doing something productive. Each and every child is doing something. No child is being destructive. All of them are thinking, analyzing, observing. They are all engaged in something that is useful. So this is what I wanted to leave you with. Thank you very much. Now if you have any questions, you can post them here. Otherwise, we can disperse.